Hello, horror fans. Today I will tell you a scary story that will shock you. I warn you, children, stay away from the screens. This story is full of paranormal events.
The night the house began to bleed, it was like any other. Cold, still, and unbearably silent. The kind of silence you don't notice until it fills every inch of your bones. But it wasn't just silence, it was suffocating. My name is Adam Weaver, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. Not to anyone, anyway. But I don't think I'll ever have the chance to forget, either. If you're reading this, I don't know what you've heard, but take it from me, the stories about the house on the hill, the one with the green liquid, those aren't just stories. Not anymore, they said it was cursed. I had always been skeptical of superstitions. I spent years as a detective in a small town in Michigan, a place where people still whispered about haunted places, the things that crawled beneath the floorboards of history. It was easy to dismiss it all, chalking it up to rural folklore. Until that house, no, that thing, came for us. Everything started with a call at 3:14 a.m. The kind of call you know will change your life. It was Detective Foster who gave me the news. "Adam, you're gonna want to see this," he said over the phone. His voice had that edge of panic, the kind you can't fake. "You remember the house on Maple Hollow Road? The one they say is cursed." Of course I knew about it. It was a relic of old gossip, a crumbling Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, shrouded by rumors and overgrown ivy. I never took the talk seriously. Cursed was just another word for abandoned in a small town like ours. Foster, though, he didn't sound like his usual calm, collected self. "Something's happening there, Adam. And I don't know what the hell it is, but we need to get there now." I didn't ask why. He didn't need to say more. I grabbed my coat and went to meet him at the precinct. When I got there, Foster's face was pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't offer pleasantries as I walked into his office, just handed me a report, the corners of the paper crinkling under his shaking hands. "Take a look," he urged. The report was from an officer who had responded to a series of strange calls near Maple Hollow Road. People had been hearing noises coming from the house. Screams. Unnatural sounds. At first, they thought it was a group of teenagers messing around, but when officers arrived, they found something else. The house wasn't just abandoned. It was alive. A thick, pulsating, green substance had begun oozing from the windows and cracks in the walls. It was like a sickly slime, dripping down in steady streams, pooling around the base of the house. The acid, they called it. And the smell. It was nauseating, something metallic and foul, like burnt rubber mixed with decay. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that whoever touched it didn't just get burned, they died. Violently. Officers who had tried to enter the house after seeing the liquid had collapsed within seconds of contact. One had his face melted off entirely, and the other's heart had stopped almost immediately. It didn't make sense. The house had been empty for decades. No one had lived there in years. But then it started to bleed. I folded the report and looked at Foster. "So, we're investigating a haunted house that's killing people with acid." "It gets worse," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "There's something inside. Something we need to stop." He paused, his eyes darting to the side as though making sure no one was listening. "A few of the officers went in last night. Only one came out alive. Barely. He was hysterical. He said something attacked them. A creature, Adam. Not human. He said it had 4 eyes, green scales, and it was eating them, one by one." A chill ran down my spine. "How the hell is that possible?" "We don't know," Foster muttered. "But I need you to come with me. We need to find out what's really going on." We drove in silence, the engine of the squad car humming as the landscape blurred into the darkness. I kept thinking about the man who had survived. What did he see? What kind of creature could cause a grown man to lose his mind like that? When we arrived at the house, I could already smell it, the acid, sharp and heavy. The house stood like a tomb on the hill, cloaked in shadows. The green substance had begun to pool in the yard, sluggish and thick, as if it were alive, waiting for us to step closer. It was more than just a mansion. There was something wrong about it. The air itself felt heavy, like the world was pressing in on us. We met with the remaining officers who had barely set foot on the property. They were all visibly shaken, their faces drawn and pale, as if they had seen something far worse than what anyone could prepare for. Are we going in? I asked, trying to keep the fear from my voice. Foster nodded grimly, pulling out his flashlight and flicking it on. We have no choice. We need answers. We stepped inside the house, and the first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was an unnatural kind of quiet. The walls felt like they were pressing in on us, suffocating us with their emptiness, and then there was the smell. The acid. The air was thick with it, burning at the back of my throat. The floor creaked beneath our weight, and I could hear a soft, almost rhythmic sound, the sound of something moving. I felt it before I saw it. A low growl echoed through their house, followed by the scrape of something wet dragging against the floor. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my heart began to race. We moved down the hall, Foster in front, his flashlight illuminating the dark corners of the rooms. As we reached the end of the hallway, we stopped dead in our tracks. There it was. A creature. It was hunched in the center of the room, its four bulbous eyes glinting in the dim light. Its green, scaly skin shimmered as if it was alive in a way that no human could understand. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp teeth, slick with the same green substance that had stained the walls. For a moment, everything went still, and then it screeched. I don't remember what happened after that. I remember the flashing lights, the sounds of screaming, and then, nothing. When I woke up, I was outside, on the cold ground, my body trembling. Foster was beside me, unconscious but alive, but the others, they were gone. Every single one of them, and the creature. It was still inside the house. I don't know how I survived, but I have to go back. I have to end it before it's too late. Before it destroys us all. The air outside was cold, biting, almost as though the world was urging us to stay away from the cursed house. But I didn't have the luxury of turning back. Every instinct told me that whatever lived inside that crumbling shell needed to be destroyed, and I was the one who had to do it. Foster had come to just before me. His eyes were wild, his breath shallow. He looked at the house, his face pale under the flickering streetlight. Adam, we need to burn it. It's the only way, he muttered, his voice hoarse, as though he had already made peace with what needed to happen. I'm not leaving without answers, I told him firmly. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we go lighting anything on fire. Foster didn't respond. He just stared at the house with a mix of terror and reluctant resolve. I could see it in his eyes, he knew it, too. If we didn't get answers soon, the creature would come for more of us. If it wasn't already the first officer who survived the attack, the one who'd come out with that broken mind, he'd left behind a record. A cryptic journal, scribbled with frenzied notes. His name was Officer Harris, and I had the journal now. It was the only thing that could provide us with the key to stopping this nightmare. I just hoped I could make sense of it before we ran out of time. We huddled in the squad car, the cold settling into our bones, while I sifted through the pages. Harris's handwriting was erratic, barely legible in places. Words spilled across the paper in long, unbroken streams, as though his mind had been unraveling even as he wrote. Journal excerpt, Officer Harris, the creature, it watches us. It can't be seen by the naked eye, but it is always there. The acid, this green substance, it's not just a warning. It's a scent. It marks those who will be its prey. I think it feeds on fear. Or maybe it feeds on us. I don't know anymore. But I do know this, it isn't just a monster. It's tied to their house. The house is a prison. And we are all locked inside it. That last sentence, locked inside it, struck me like a punch to the gut. Was it possible that the house itself was a kind of trap? Was it alive in some way? The thought made my skin crawl, but Harris had mentioned it too many times for it to be a coincidence. I turned to Foster, who was gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. This house, I said slowly, it's not just a place. It's something else. I think it's alive, in a way we don't understand. That creature, it's a part of it. We need to figure out why. Foster didn't reply at first, but after a long silence, he spoke. If it's alive, then we don't stand a chance. Adam, I've seen things. Terrible things. That acid, it wasn't just for killing. I think it's feeding off us. It's making us weaker. His voice cracked on the last word, and I realized just how much fear had taken root inside him. If Foster, the seasoned detective who had faced countless horrors over the years, was afraid, then whatever was in that house was far worse than I had imagined, but fear couldn't be allowed to control us. Not now. We're going back in, I told him, my voice a little stronger than I felt. We need to find something, anything, that will explain what's happening. If we can't, we won't be able to stop it. Foster didn't protest. He didn't have to. I could see it in his eyes. He was just as desperate to find answers as I was. We parked the squad car near the edge of the property, just out of sight of the house, but close enough that we could make a run for it if we needed to. The moon was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the yard. The green slime had thickened, spreading like an infection across the ground. We moved silently, knowing that the creature could be anywhere. Their house loomed ahead, its windows blackened, its front door hanging loosely on its hinges, almost as though it were waiting for us to enter. I wasn't prepared for the smell. It hit me like a wave the moment we crossed the threshold, a nauseating mix of rot and chemical burn, overwhelming everything else. The green liquid was worse now, thickening in places, turning darker, almost black in certain spots, like it was alive in a way that didn't make sense. The walls themselves felt wrong. They were slick, almost moist to the touch, as though they were breathing. There was a wetness, like their house was sweating the same green acid that had claimed the lives of those officers. I kept my hands clenched into fists to keep from touching anything, afraid that the moment my skin made contact, I'd meet the same violent end as they had. Where do we start? Foster whispered, his eyes darting from room to room, alert for any sign of movement. I glanced at the staircase in the hall. Upstairs. We need to find the heart of this place. He nodded, his face grim, and we ascended the creaky stairs, every step sending a shudder through the structure. As we reached the top, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The first room we entered was the master bedroom, dark, cold, and suffocating. The window was shattered, and the walls were streaked with the green acid. There was a pungent, metallic smell in the air, something that made my stomach churn, like iron left too long in the sun, and that's when I saw it. The floorboards were warped, some of them broken. Something was beneath them. Something large. Without thinking, I rushed forward, prying at the planks with my hands. Foster grabbed my arm. Don't. Whatever's down there, I didn't care. The urge to uncover the truth was too powerful. Finally, I pried up the last of the floorboards. Beneath them, there was a hollow space, dark and deep. Something was moving in there, something huge. And then, I saw it. A mass. Twisted and grotesque, a large, bulbous shape, its green eyes blinking in the dark. I staggered back, my heart racing in my chest, but the creature didn't move. It just stared. Those four eyes glowed, flickering like the dying embers of a fire. What is it? Foster breathed, his voice cracking. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I knew what it was. The creature was the source of the house's curse. And we had just disturbed its prison. It was as if the air itself thickened around us, the silence pressing in with the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. The creature, with its four grotesque eyes and bulbous form, lay half submerged in the dark cavity beneath the floor, a mass of twisting green veins and scales that shimmered faintly in the dim light. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I could only feel its gaze, like ice against my skin, penetrating my every thought, my every breath. Foster was right beside me, frozen, his flashlight trembling in his hand. His knuckles were white, and his face, if possible, had turned even paler than before. Is that it? He finally whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't need to. The creature was the thing that had been killing people. It was the source of the acid, the venom that had been spreading through their house, tainting everything it touched. It had been waiting, lurking, feeding off the terror of the town and the broken souls who came too close. The journal Harris had left behind, the last cryptic notes, rushed back to me. I flipped through the pages in my mind. The creature, it feeds on fear, it's tied to their house, we are all locked inside it. Those words circled in my brain, echoing like a death knell. The acid, the creature, the green slime, it wasn't just random. It was a parasite. A symbiotic force that needed the house to survive. It needed us to survive. The creature's eyes blinked. A faint tremor rippled through the floor beneath us. I flinched, instinctively stepping back, but Foster grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "We need to leave, Adam," he said, his voice ragged with panic. "This thing, whatever it is, it's alive. It'll kill us both if we don't get out of here now." I could feel the urgency in his words, but deep down, I knew we couldn't run. Not yet. Not without understanding what we were dealing with. "Not yet, Foster," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "We can't run until we know how to stop it. It's not just a monster. It's part of the house. It's the thing that's been killing everyone." I stepped closer to the creature, my body moving against every instinct to flee. My legs felt like lead, but I pushed on. Something deep inside me, the same drive that made me a detective, urged me to find answers, no matter the cost. Foster looked at me like I was insane, but he followed. He had to. There was no turning back now. I approached the dark pit in the floor, my hands trembling as I shined the flashlight down into the cavity. The creature's eyes glinted again, unsettlingly bright, and it moved, not in the way a living thing should. It shifted, like oil swirling in water, its body undulating and morphing, and then it spoke. I don't know how to describe the sound. It wasn't a voice, not human, not anything I could understand. It was a low, growling hiss, guttural and alien. But it wasn't just noise, it was understanding. I could feel it seeping into my mind, scraping against my thoughts like fingernails on a chalkboard. "You are not supposed to be here." The words filled the room like a dark fog, thick and suffocating. I recoiled, feeling the weight of its presence pressing down on me. It knew us. It knew everything about us, our deepest fears, our weaknesses. Foster cursed, pulling me back toward the door, but I resisted. The creature, it, was speaking to me. It was reaching into my mind, weaving its presence into every thought. "Adam," Foster hissed, pulling harder. "We need to leave. Now." But I didn't budge. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it could even hear me. My voice shook, and the words felt small, pointless, in the face of its unimaginable power. "You should not have come." The voice was cold, like ice creeping through my veins, but there was something else, something older. Ancient. The house wasn't just a home. It was a prison. And the creature was the warden. The walls shifted again, groaning as the house itself seemed to stir with life. The green substance began to pool beneath us, rising up around the base of the walls. It was as if the house itself had become aware of our presence, responding to us in a sick, twisted dance, and then, like the final nail in a coffin, the creature lunged. It wasn't fast, but it was relentless. Its body expanded, the scales cracking and reshaping as it crawled its way toward us, dragging its massive form from beneath the floor. The eyes, those terrifying, multifaceted eyes, glowed brighter now, each one tracking us as we backed toward the door. I could see it. The creature wasn't just a beast. It was the house. It was made of it. The very foundation, the wood, the beams, the walls, all of it was alive. It was a parasitic force that had festered in the earth for decades, feeding off the lives it consumed. I turned to Foster, my voice a hoarse whisper. It needs to feed on us. Our fear. The house, it's part of it. If we run, it will kill us. Foster didn't speak. His eyes were wide with horror, but he understood. We had to fight this thing, or it would destroy everything. I looked down at my hands, which had started to shake. My gun was still holstered at my side. But what use was a gun against something like this? The acid, whatever it was, had already proven its power. A bullet wouldn't stop the creature. It wouldn't stop the house. I looked back toward the creature, still crawling toward us, its eyes unblinking, its body folding and refolding like an abomination made of flesh and wood. Then it spoke again, the words cutting through the air like a scream. "You cannot escape. You never will. This place is your tomb." The floor beneath us trembled, but something shifted within me. The terror that had clutched my chest began to fade, replaced by a calm I hadn't expected. I could feel it, the truth. I understood now. The creature wasn't just a monster. It was a guardian, a warden. It was keeping us here. Keeping us trapped in the prison that had been built around it, and then the answer came to me. I grabbed Foster's arm. The acid. It's not just killing us. It's containing us. The green stuff, whatever it is, it holds us here. It's what keeps the house alive, keeps the creature alive. If we destroy it, we can break the curse. Foster's eyes widened in disbelief. How the hell do you plan to do that? We need to burn it, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. The acid, their house, it's all tied together. We destroy the source of it, and the house will die with it. And the creature, I looked back at the four-eyed monster, its eyes narrowing, its form twitching as if it sensed what we were planning. It'll die too. Foster looked at me for a long moment, his breath shallow, before he nodded. We burn it all. We didn't look back. We set the house on fire.